see if you can look beyond just what you can see right in front of you. Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the Jeff Heilman Project. We're so sorry that we missed you last week, but we were entertaining house
We had a
guests.
house guest.
Yes,
You want
my
to talk a little bit
lovely
about
mother.
your mom, my mother-in-law, Grandma Pam,
Grandma Pam was in town from Idaho, coming
AKA
and visiting. She
Grandma
brought the
Idaho.
sunny weather with her. It's been 80 degrees in San Jose this week. It's been so beautiful. It's supposed to get colder tomorrow, but I've been enjoying it out in the garden, which is why currently, for our audio listeners, I am wearing jeans and my t-shirt, and I don't have my makeup on. Sorry about that, YouTube watchers, but I was in the garden like an hour ago. So here I am for the podcast. It's the benefit of working remote from home.
That's
So
right.
thanks to Grandma Pam for coming out and visiting. You know, she's going to be on the show in a few weeks. We're going to try to do, I think, a Zoom call with her as she's got a book that she recently came out with, and she's got a book fair
What's
coming
the name
up.
of the book is called?
It's right here. It's called Life Beyond Labels, A Story of Victory Through Forgiveness. And her name is Pamela Elizabeth. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and anywhere that you would like to get a copy. And if you're interested in overcoming labels, it's a fantastic book for that. And so Andrew will put the link in the
Yeah, Pam had
in the
a
description.
really fascinating upbringing. Her dad was a very high-ranking official in Lockheed at Lockheed Martin during basically the post-World War II arms race here in Silicon Valley, and had all kinds of advanced technologies like cell phones that would fit in your pocket in the 70s.
Gosh, yeah, it was.
Things
I
you
remember
can't
that.
talk about,
Things you-
and very
Top
very
secret.
interesting life growing up. And she was a debutante and a dancer, ballet and modern dance, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
And ended up going to San Diego State. Had Jessica when she was 20, I think, and then worked as a single mom for a while to try to figure out a way to make ends meet, and then became a successful executive at Apple and retired from
All
Apple.
through that, ended up in her later life coming down with multiple sclerosis and fibromyalgia. And so just her story is all about learning how to live life beyond labels and seeing yourself as the identity that God has given you.
Should be a
And
fascinating conversation.
really, really good. But we are going to continue our episodes. We've been working through the acronym HEALTH, H-E-A-L-T-H. And for today, this episode, we're focusing on the letter A, which is going to be arm's reach. So the letter A is for arm, and it's about, today's episode is about, not letting your circle, the circle that, let's imagine if we had our arms open and we were walking around, we're swinging around in a circle, like going beyond our arm's reach. Can we see beyond our comfort zone? Can we see beyond what we can just easily, the low hanging fruit, if you will? And so we're just going to talk today a little bit about going beyond. And I'd like to ask you, honey, like, is there a time that stands out, if you were going to highlight it save it for posterity for the kids, or highlight it for this podcast, a time when you went out of your comfort zone and you saw some sort of result, maybe big, maybe small, maybe it was getting out of your comfort zone in a minute thing, or maybe it was getting out of your comfort zone and doing some huge gesture. But is there a time in your past that you can think of that you went beyond your low hanging fruit, went beyond your arm's reach, that you would like to share with us?
I think probably the defining. I've had a couple of defining seasons, and when I transitioned from credit card collections at minimum wage to that year where we made almost $700,000 at
Yeah.
Perfigo, that was insanity, and it was a hazing process because I was with a bunch of 25 and 30-year-old multimillionaires, and here, I'm living at home with my mother-in-law Pamela, who was previously mentioned on this call, driving a car I couldn't afford registration for, that actually got impounded, that I didn't even
I
own.
remember that.
And we had to basically play nursemaid, and you had to clean house and pick up after dogs and stuff in order to make good on living with Pam. That was your part while I went and looked for work, and I couldn't feed my family, which is humiliating just for anybody who's, red-blooded American man that can't feed his families that's not a good, that's not the top of the heap you want to stay on. So there was about a 6-month hazing period where I was extremely uncomfortable. I was working easily 10 to 12 hours a day in the office, which wouldn't be considered that big of a deal, except that the office was 50 miles from our house. And so to be in the office at 5:30 in the morning and then stay until 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night and have an hour drive up and an hour and a half drive back on top of pounding the phones all day, selling a product that, I mean, talk about a disconnect. I thought the server was the gal that brought you your menus. So I knew absolutely nothing about the technology. I'm spending 12 hours a day in immersion. I'm reading 3x5 cards on product architecture diagrams under the light of a third-hand pickup truck that was given to me that I used for commuting. And I would teach myself the OSI, the 7-layer OSI model of networking under the dome light on 3x5 cards after I drove home after working 12-hour days. And I did that for a year until we got bought by Cisco. And it was like Neo in the Matrix. Like it bent my reality of what I thought was possible, what I thought I was capable of, and took me from the minors to the majors in business.
That's awesome. Yeah, getting out of our comfort zone is could you explain, like, let's just imagine here that somebody has never heard of the phrase getting out of the comfort zone. Could you maybe help us to understand what a comfort zone is?
I think that the comfort zone, from a clinical psychology standpoint, as I understand it, is your parasympathetic nervous system. It's when all things are homeostatic. The problem is that most people's thermostat is tuned to poverty because of public school. And I'm not against public school. I can tell you the first and last name of every teacher I had all the way up through college, including the teachers that were in the other rooms that I didn't take. And I've done that on demand multiple times.
And I don't know that I would necessarily just throw public school in that light. I think I call it traditional school, because there's even private schools. There's schools that are paid for. Those seem to have a higher paying
I think it's
faculty,
less.
but
I think it's less with the public schools. It's more about the association. Like you're hanging out with union teachers who
sure,
are not compensated based on performance. They're compensated based on how long they've been able to continue, and it's not a meritocracy, which is
sure.
some of the changes that we're seeing with Trump changing the zip code rules for where people have their schooling so that you can have a meritocracy, get the higher attendance and the more demand for the schools that have the better teachers. That's it's kind of it's an anomaly because it's not a private sector situation. The difference in private sector is, they're not union teachers.
Mm,
They are typically schools that have some form of faith foundation. And you're also looking at how they're funded. They're not funded by government programs. They're funded by wealthy patrons who have been successful merchants or others,
yeah,
but mostly people in business and insurance and banking that are funding. And so you're going to get some guidance from the
sure.
people who have their money involved in those businesses, whether it's through endowments or tuition. So again, I'm not knocking public school. I'm a product of public school, but let's not make it more than it is. The truth is that public schools are designed in order to continue to pull money out of the treasury and fund basically the strongest union in the world, which is the teachers' unions. And so it's just a different agenda. The agenda is not to educate kids. The agenda is not to create excellence. The agenda is not to, positively impact the GDP. The purpose of public schools is to fund unions out of the treasury and maintain a political source of power and prowess and lobbying that is a force to be reckoned with in Washington. So I'm not mad at anybody. That is what it
And
is.
the comfort zone tends to come out of a propaganda which says that go to work, get a good job so that you can
Yeah.
come home, and that's,
Yeah. Think
there's
about it.
admirable. I would definitely hope that people are taught to work. I definitely hope that, people get encouraged coming out of our traditional school systems to have jobs and to contribute, but there is a level of comfort that says,
Yeah.
I don't need to I don't need much, and because I don't need much, I'm not gonna outstretch.
Yeah. And people who don't need much don't produce much, right?
Correct.
People who
Right.
produce a lot, they don't produce a lot because they're bored. They don't produce a lot because there's nothing better for them to do. They produce a lot because they have a big vision in their life and they're determined to make that vision a reality. And so when you have people through a school system who are trained to accept and actually favor mediocrity so that you can quote unquote get along or just go with the flow or any of these poverty naming conventions for accepting mediocrity, it makes it difficult for anybody coming up through that system to actually say, hey, what would it be like to make $2 million a year and have a Ferrari, or to be able to create a cure for cancer, or to go into medical school and do top-notch level separation of Siamese twins like what we saw with
Ben
Ben
Carson.
Carson. Those types of
Ben
things are
Carson
really.
in Gifted Hands, if you have not
Yeah, if
read
you haven't
it.
read Gifted Hands,
Fantastic.
my
Even the movie
goodness.
with Cuba Gooding Jr. as Dr. Carson. And to your point, there's no better way to stifle creativity and kill ambition than to cut funding for the arts programs or the
Yeah,
sports
perfect example,
programs.
right?
And if you want to make a sleepy society who doesn't need much, then just remove the creative arts and
Yeah.
remove the sports programs altogether, and then you'll just have a
Yeah.
society that is, and we're not even saying the only thing left is STEM, because STEM can even be a very creative and very
Oh, very much
artistic
so.
way. It's more just about like showing up, getting the work done, and then going home. And so when we're talking about like stretching and outstretching and growing and having a vision and being able to see things bigger, so often we have to be in a place to where we are exposed to bigger, where we're traveling, where we're going out, where we're leaving our little communities and our habit trails. The animal kingdom have what's called, habit trails. If you go into the woods and you'll see these paths that look like people have made them, but they haven't. They've been like the bear that takes the same path every time they pat down the ground surface, and then it becomes what they're called a habit trail. And so today's episode, I would hope, would be to encourage us to look at our habit trails that we've created in our own lives, and the things that are working. Absolutely 100% should be consistent. I mean, Jeff and I, we've talked about our schedules repeatedly and how like we have to be disciplined and do the same types of things every single day. However, evaluating like maybe what's not working and being able to create a new habit trail, or just get a new habit, and then just getting a vision for something bigger. So maybe, honey, you could share like, what are you seeing coming around the corner that's bigger than maybe you saw in 2024? It is March now. We're 3 months in. The resolutions are gone by the wayside, because anybody who's made a resolution by now, it's probably either full on or has forgotten about it. Now we're in March. Have you cast a new vision, or can you see
No,
beyond your
I'm still
arms
working.
stretch?
I'm still working on the same stuff I've been working on, which is figuring out how to pivot to a digital product, digital delivery mechanism for attention capture, day trading attention. That's what we're in the business of. We're all in the business of day trading people's attention, and that we do it at our day jobs. And if we support somebody else that does it, then we might be one step removed from the actual job of creating content. But ultimately, creating content is that's the path. That's where we're at. That's the wave of the future. So I'm still working on those areas, and if we look at creating content, has been a little bit troublesome for me in that I wanted to be able to find a way to make it all fit together. I felt like I've had 1,000 puzzle pieces on the table, and I've had a clump of 25 pieces over here and a clump of 25 pieces over there.
Hey, at least you're sorting them into groups.
Yeah, they're sorted into groups, but it's still the puzzle pieces are not put together, and I did not feel very good that I had a good clear picture on the box of what we're trying to build. And so what I'm working on now is something that I've never really heard it named this. It's something new. And it's effectively something that I call quantum influence. And quantum influence is, to me, the answer to the question, what happens when AI takes over the world, right? And AI is going to take over the world. And that doesn't mean that Starlink is
Skynet is real.
Skynet. Yeah.
Skynet is real.
Skynet.
If you're not wearing 3,000 sunblock, you're gonna have a really bad day.
Bad day, Linda Hamilton. I don't think it's robots taking over the world and telling people what to do, and then they're shooting us and we die. I don't necessarily think it's like that. Although there's certainly game theory that has probabilities as to how likely that's actually how likely that is. But what I'm talking about is, as technology companies, which are dependent on differentiation, all of a sudden have to go through AI as your primary interface. I've already replaced Google with ChatGPT almost entirely. I mean, I don't think I go to Google 5% as much as I used to. Not even 5%. It's almost entirely ChatGPT. And it's simply because the yields are better, they're more accurate, they have a history, they're directed exactly at what I want to see, and they can cross-reference other searches that I've already had versus searches being independent or only cross-referenced by others. So when we look at that, what happens when everybody has access to the same tool and everybody's only using one tool or one very short list of best practices in the world of AI? And what I found is that the one thing that cannot be replaced by AI, it can be augmented, it can be assisted, it can be helped, it can work with copywriting, it can work with avatars, it can work with voiceovers, it can work with podcasts, it can do digital and social media marketing, it can do email newsletters, but it can't influence the same way person to person that people can. And from an iconic brand perspective, we've heard all this about the concept of the personal brand. The personal brand is an extension of quantum influence. And quantum's a fancy word that basically means a small microparticle or a small activity that ends up having big.
And if you're a product of the 80s, it was Scott Bakula
and
Quantum Leap.
And Quantum Leap, yeah. But when I talk about quantum influence, I'm talking about the little micro changes in your daily routine that ultimately have big levers. W. Clement Stone said, "Small hinges swing big doors." So when I think about quantum influence, I think, what are the small hinges? And effectively, what I've broken it down to is you got three main pillars and an X factor. Hey, I just got the answer. I got the answer. I got an answer to the next factor that I was looking for, just right there.
Ding, 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 ding,
so this is how we work, folks. We basically push plutonium, uranium-238, and we blast it with energy until it starts to create chain reactions, and then that chain reaction, to me, ends up coming out in the form of hunches when you're relaxed. And right now, I'm pretty relaxed. I haven't had a beer or a cigar or anything, but I'm chill after a long day, and it's hot as F in this garage, so I'm sweating. So it's kind of getting us relaxing. I'm sitting here drinking my bubbly, and I'm hanging out with my family, whom I love and adore. And so I'm pretty relaxed right now. Well, the three pillars of quantum influence, number one is execution. And execution in this area is what I'm talking about, putting systems in place along the lines of checklist manifesto, where you have standard operating procedures, checklists, agile software development approaches to project management, Kanban boards, Pomodoro timers, the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins, and work limits. These are all areas of things that you can do in order to say, am I working on the most important thing I could be doing? Am I doing full send, best possible effort because of a complete restoration cycle of reading, writing, prayer, meditation, family time, gym, hydration, proper sleeping? And then am I doing it for sustainable work beats of 15 or 20 minutes with a Pomodoro timer? Am I blocking out, as I've done recently? I've changed my sleep schedule so that I can get 8 hours a day of deep work after the kids are in bed. That has to do with execution. The next area has to do with something called frame control. And that can be, you can study more about that from Oren Klaff and Strategic Empathy in Chris Voss's book. Never split the difference. And then the third has to do with bending the perception of constituents, employees, the general public, as relates to whatever your movement is. And I'll give you an example. Henry Ford said you can have any car as long as it's black. Elon Musk comes along 100 years later and says the only cars that are cool are electric cars that you can buy from me. And if you don't have an electric car, you're not cool. And that's a different way of selling than saying, oh, I have a car and it's just like everybody else's. He's basically saying, if you want to participate in helping the human race get to Mars, you need to own a Tesla. And same thing with Steve Jobs, talking about he didn't sell an MP3 player, which you can buy for $19. He sold 1,000 songs in your pocket, a revolution of consumerism pointed toward the highest possible aesthetic digital consumables. That combination, bending the perception of the general public, your constituents, your employees, and your customers. Excellence in the area of execution through systematized automation and frame control, which you could read 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, et cetera. All of those three pillars multiplied by the X factor of the personal brand, which is the answer I just got here, to me represents quantum influence. So is that a diatribe? 150%. Do I have this message baked? No. It's brand new to the universe from my prayer and meditation time going away for a couple of days weekend before last. And so you'll hear more about quantum influence on this podcast, on the newsletter, on my digital and social media channels, and eventually online courses and some done for you and done with you professional services offerings available at jeffheilman.com.
And I think it is a perfect example of getting beyond your own four walls and exposing and, letting I liken it to opening all the windows and letting the good scents waft out. There's nothing like walking past a kitchen window after a fresh hot baked pie and
That's right.
the attention that this wonderful aroma draws unto it, and everybody wants to be a part of what you're doing. And so like you said, I love that creating a movement is
It
what
really
we're
is. It
talking
really is.
about when
It's a
we talk
movement.
about the A in health in our episodes about getting beyond our arm's reach and not letting ourselves be limited to just what we can physically see. Like if you think about your arms and what they can reach, that's just what you can see. Like you can see here, and if you go, 20 feet out, 40 feet out, 60 feet out, 1,000 feet out, 1,200 feet out, and you can begin to hopefully see further, then you're going to go further and you're going to grow further. And personally growing, bringing your family up. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are listening that are in a place where they would just like to elevate, they just want to have a little extra money, or maybe they want a new position or a new job. And so to be able to encourage you and say, look beyond, see if you can look beyond just what you can see right in front of you. Go into your prayer time, go into your meditation, go someplace quiet, go to the beach, go out into nature, wherever you feel like you can do some really good thinking and see what you can do to influence not only your own personal house, but those of others. So, do you have any last, do you want to close us out? Close us out, Mr. Heilman. What do we have to look forward to? We're going
I think
into April, like next week, next episode.
It is.
It'll be April.
Yeah, that's right.
And our 100th episode in April is coming up.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Has it been two? It's been 2 years, I guess.
Andrew, I guess so.
Almost.
Yeah, he's shaking. Andrew's shaking his head. Yeah.
I remember we didn't write off any podcast stuff on last year's taxes because that was 2 years ago. So, or at least not the equipment. But yeah, I think that for the top 25% in America, this is going to be the most amazing period of unprecedented financial growth. You're going to see people make tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, some of them in college and high school. And to have that opportunity available to everybody, whether people take advantage of it or not, will be the rising tide that raises all ships. The challenge is going to be the bottom 75%. which it's kind of funny to think of them as bottom because relatively that would be the rest. But the truth is, when people look at that and they gripe about DEI and they gripe about income inequality and all this nonsense, because what they're saying they want is equal opportunity, and what they actually need is equal outcome, for equal effort put in. When we get done with the whining and we look at what's actually on the table, the reason why the U.S. is such a great place to live for the mediocre, for the people living in flyover states that make 50 grand a year or working 3 jobs between 2 families and have a $80,000 home loan. The reason it's so great for those people, the reason they have access to medical care, which was paid to be developed by colleges and universities with tens of billions of dollars in endowments, is because of the elite upper echelon of people who have driven themselves and their organizations to create the productivity that funds the lifestyle that all of the mediocre folks are also able to take advantage of by proxy. And if you think I'm wrong on that, you're certainly entitled to your opinion. We'd love to hear your comments. But what I can tell you is that Warren Buffett said in an interview he did with Charlie Rose in December 2023 that the homeless person today has a better quality of living, longer longevity, better access to technology, better access to healthcare, better access to entertainment, more access to available capital markets, more investment opportunities, more employment opportunities, more housing opportunities, better water, better food in every single capacity in 2023 than John D. Rockefeller had in 1937 when Warren Buffett was just a kid.
Wow.
So, maybe Warren Buffett doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. Maybe he's an idiot, and maybe the $200 billion that he's accumulated from investing over the last 70 years doesn't speak to his sense of humanity or fairness. But those aren't my words. Those are his. So thanks for being with us, everybody. This is the Jeff Heilman Project. I am Jeff Heilman.
He is said
And,
Heilman.
Thanks to my wife and my co-host and my producer, Andrew, for a great show today. We do hope that you are blessed, that you are anointed to prosper, and that you upgrade your narrative to coincide with the way that you are looked at by our Creator. And we appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.